Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description. Greetings, and welcome to another video. So on the screen, you are seeing 7 different vanilla monsters. Some of these monsters have already been known throughout the years. Like for example, Darkblade and Trihorn Dragon are very popular ones. Darkblade is known for having a lot of miscellaneous support, being with fusion monsters and with union monsters, while Trihorn Dragon was like one of the first monsters ever released. It came out in the Legend of Blue Eyes set, which is already around 25 years old now. Uh, there are a few less common ones. For example, Wretched Ghost of the Addict is a monster that people often confused with Karibo, but it's not really Karibo. It's its own other monster, and this monster only had one printing here in the TCG, which is a tournament pack. Key Mace is another monster that was known back then. She had a bunch of different versions, like at least 2 or 3. And then we have a little bit more obscure ones. This one came out in Solo the Duelist, but there was really nothing that was relevant to this monster in itself outside of the name Goblin. If you are familiar with goblins, they have a lot of different monsters. And next year, when Phantom Nightmare arrives in the TCG, we're going to have a few more of them. And then we have 2 monsters that are not even here in the TCG. We have Tatsuno Toshigo and we have Fairy Witch. Both these monsters are not even TCG legal. They are both still in the OCG. So why am I bringing up all these vanilla monsters? As we have already known and we've seen in the past, Konami likes grabbing old things or old monsters and just try to make a supporting theme or like an archetype to based around multiple of them. We've seen that in the past with vampires, with thunder dragons. Just to give you 1 or 2 examples, we've seen miscellaneous blue eye support, dark magician support. So now there's the question: what do all of these monsters have in common? Why are we mentioning all these monsters? And the more unorthodox one is Darkblade, because Darkblade already has its own theme with a bunch of cards that just work alongside it, including a fusion monster. So it's kind of weird seeing this monster here being paired up with the rest of these. So yeah, we're about to find out. So in Valiant Smashers, we're about to receive a new archetype, and the monster that revolves around that archetype is this monster right here. This monster is called Mementotlans Teklutica, the Nether Skull Dragon. I'm pretty sure I butchered that name. So the way it works is this monster right here pretty much created an army out of all these miscellaneous other monsters. For Wretched Ghost of the Addict, we have the Addict Ghost, the Memento Addict Ghost. For the Tatsuno Shigo, we have a Memento version of itself as well. And for the Fairy Witch, we also have that. We also have one for Key Mace. We have one for the Horn Dragon. We have one for the Goblin. And we have one for the Darkblade. So all these 7 monsters that you see on the board, they all have a version of themselves that are pretty much a memorabilia, and they're all created because of the Nether Skull Dragon. Basically, the theme revolves around all these monsters trying to use themselves to siphon cards into the graveyard, so you can fulfill the summoning requirement for the Nether Skull. It feels like a ritual deck in a way, because basically all these monsters are a means to an end, and that end being like the Nether Skull Dragon being summoned. Before I get to explaining the archetype as a whole, I guess we can talk about the monster itself. So, the Nether Skull Dragon is a 5,000 attack and defense monster that's level 11. It's a Nami, so it cannot be normal summoned or set, and it can only be special summoned by its own effect. Its own effect being shuffling 5 other Memento monsters with different names from your hand and or graveyard into the deck or extra deck. Notice that we don't have a Memento from the extra deck just yet. I'm only showcasing 7. That pretty much tells us that in the future, Konami might be open into just giving us a Memento extra deck monster. So that's something important to note. For the rest of the effect, if you control no other monsters, this card can attack all opponent's monsters once each. Once per turn, if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can special summon 1 Memento monster from your hand or graveyard. So pretty much, this is a monster that's designed for just like try to centralize the game around its existence as a whole, and the way you do that is by shuffling all the other Memento monsters. Now that we know what the Nether Skull Dragon does and its summoning requirements, let's talk about the other Mementos and how can they make that possible. All the Memento monsters have an effect that involves if they are destroyed in some way, with the exception of the Addict Ghost, which is triggered when it's sent to the graveyard. The Dark Blade can pop itself to special summon a level 3 or lower Memento from the deck. The Goblin can pop itself, or pop a Memento rather. All of these monsters can pop any other Memento, it doesn't have to be themselves. But this one summons from the deck. This one mills 2 Memento cards. This one mills monsters up to the surplus of the level of the monster you destroyed. Horn Dragon pops up to 3 cards on the field. Well, it has to be 3 cards specifically, and one of them has to be a Memento. This one can search you a Memento card. And this one can special summon from the graveyard a level 2 or lower Memento monster. So adding to that, let's look at other effects. The Fairy Wish can add a Memento upon her summon. The Dark Blade can discard a Memento card to pop a spell or trap. The Tatsuno Shiro can special summon itself if you only control Mementos or you don't control any monsters. Both the Key Mace and the Goblin have hand trap effects. As quick effects, you can discard it, and like this one gives targeting protection to your Mementos, and this one makes it so you can take the control of a monster. In order to do both hand trap effects of these two, you need to control the Nether Skull Dragon. The Memento Horn Dragon can special summon itself from the hand if you have 3 or more Memento names in your graveyard. So now that you know what all these monsters can do, we're gonna look at the rest of the cards from the theme and like try to explain their win condition outright. So what I'm going to be doing is just emptying out the board, moving all these monsters here. And now we're going to see the rest of their cards. So they have 2 trap cards and 2 spell cards. And I think there's another card, 3 spell cards. Let's start with the field spell. So the field spell is called Nether Skull Temple, Mementotlans. Basically, if a Memento monster you control battles, your opponent cannot activate spell traps until the end of the damage step. So basically, it turns your Memento monsters into like pseudo Utopia Lightnings. They can still respond with monster effects. However, with spell and traps, they cannot respond. So that kind of avoids like battle phase tricks, like Forbidden Lands, for example. If you declare and they have something set, like an enemy controller, they pretty much have to preemptively use it. Just to give you an example of many other things. If a monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one Memento monster with a lower level from your hand or graveyard. Take note, it's when any monster is destroyed, and it can include your opponent's monsters. And this does not target put to summon back. The last effect, once per turn, during the end phase, you can grab one Memento spell or trap in your graveyard and you can just set it. So in the options these cards end up in your graveyard, you can just set them with the temple during the end phase. Now let's go to the other spell cards. We have Memento Boneback, we have Memento Bone Party. We'll start with Bone Party. Bone Party is essentially like a branded opening. Basically, you pop a Memento from your hand or field, and if you do, you special summon another Memento or you add another Memento. It has to be different from the one you popped. You can banish this card from your graveyard, and it pretty much gives piercing damage to one Memento monster. So essentially, you can just give piercing to the Nether Skull Dragon, and since this monster can attack multiple times, pretty much all your opponent's monsters, you're pretty much just trying to aim for lethal with Nether Skull. Boneback, what it does is if a face-up Memento that you control leaves the field because of your opponent, you can special summon a Nether Skull Dragon from your hand or deck, and it ignores the summoning requirements. It basically ignores the summoning conditions. So even though this is a Nami, this card can special summon it. If your opponent moves a Memento monster out of your graveyard while this card's in your graveyard, you can banish this card and just special summon as many Mementos from your hand or deck. So this card becomes like an Exo-Sister scenario. Basically, while this card's in your graveyard, your opponent won't interact with your graveyard by any means. Otherwise, they will get heavily punished. Unless they have something like Ash Blossom. So this is kind of good in the theme because, as we already stated earlier, we need 5 Memento monsters for your opponent to like respond with to summon the Nether Skull Dragon. If your opponent wants to try to stop you from doing that, the Boneback is pretty much like a safety net that's just going to punish your opponent if they end up doing so. I think this card is super excellent. The only downside about this card is that it revolves around your opponent doing something. However, this deck is kind of fragile in what it's trying to do. No pun intended. So having a card like this one is kind of very unique, but it also like makes a lot of sense when you're reading the rest of the theme. We have Memento Cranium Burst. So basically what this one does is it forces your opponent's monsters to attack the highest position monster on the board. So it's basically an equivalent to like the I think it was called Final Attack Orders. There was an old continuous spell card that pretty much did that same effect. When your opponent activates a monster effect in the field, you can target the Nether Skull Dragon, reduce his attack by 1000, and if you do, negate that activated effect. You can only use each effect once per chain. Well, you can only use this specific effect once per chain. I think this card is excellent. I think pretty much it solidifies a win condition for your Nether Skull Dragon. So in the off chance your opponent like tries to like use their monster effects to just try to contest against this, you can just flip the cranium burst and just outright negate it. And as long as the nether skull is on the board, your opponent has to like try to get rid of it if they don't want to fall victim to a cranium burst. However, this is like 5,000 attack, so it's kind of rough to just get rid of this outside of just like outright removal. And this card is another card that pairs well with the Bone Back, because if your opponent actually gets rid of your Nether Skull Dragon, you can Bone Back to special summon another one. And pretty much the Cranium Burst is reset because you have a new Nether Skull Dragon with 5,000 attack. Now we're gonna look at the last card. This is Memento Fracture Dance. If you control a Memento monster, you can target a card on the field, you can destroy it, and if you control the Nether Skull Dragon, you can non-target destroy another card. When an attack is declared involving your Memento monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard and make every monster your opponent controls lose 1,000 attack. Again, this is just another way to facilitate your win condition, which is just winning the game with the Nether Skull Dragon. So, you're probably looking at all of this and you're wondering, is it really easy or is it really tough to just summon the Nether Skull Dragon? Well, let's find out. What I'm going to show you, I guess, one combo, and the combo is pretty much a one card combo which can get you to Nether Skull. The card that makes it all possible would be the Fairy Witch. So, pretty much the sequence goes as follows. You're going to activate the Fairy Witch's effect. With the Fairy Witch, you're going to add one Memento. And the Memento that you will be adding to your hand would be the Tatsuno Tsuchigo. We're just going to put all these Mementos cards back to the top of the deck, just to like showcase you the role that each of them want to play, because depending on what you end up drawing or opening your hand, this combo can change significantly. So now that we have the Tatsuno Shigo, we can special summon it, since we only control Memento monsters. And now you can do the Tatsuno Shigo's effect, and you can target itself, blow it up, and since this is level 5, we're going to send a total of level 5 between Memento monsters. So we're going to send the Goblin, we're going to send the Key Mace, and we're going to use this as a proxy, but we're going to send another copy of the Memento Fairy Witch. So if you do the total, it's 3, 4, 5. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to activate the Fairy Witch's effect, and with the Fairy Witch we're going to target the Memento Goblin. Since it's a level 2 or lower Memento monster, we're going to bring back the Goblin and we're going to blow up the Fairy Witch. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to use the Memento Goblin's effect. We're going to pop itself, and now we can send any 2 Memento cards. So for the explanation here, we're going to be sending the Horned Dragon and we're going to send the Nether Skull Dragon. And now if you look at the graveyard, you have a total of 7 cards, and all 7 cards are different Memento monsters, except for Fairy Witch, where you have another copy. But pretty much what you're going to end up doing is you're going to send all these back, and you're going to special summon the Nether Skull Dragon. So this is pretty much like your one card combo, or your one card that can get you directly to the Nether Skull Dragon. There is a lot of steps that you have to do in order to get there. There are cards that you require in the deck in order for you to do that sequence. And sadly, this combo specifically does not play into Nibiru, because your only summons are the Witch, the Tatsunoshigo, the Goblin, and then the Nether Skull, which would be like your first summon. However, depending on the sequence and what other things you can do, you can actually fall to Nibiru. But if you're only doing this summon, then you don't fall into Nibiru because this would be your fourth summon. So now let's see what other things we can do. So I'm going to showcase you a combo that involves the Nether Skull Temple because the temple does play a very important role. This pretty much makes it so you don't end on just the Nether Skull Dragon. You're gonna end on more cards alongside it. But it's no longer a one card combo in this instance. So basically we're going to be doing the same thing that we were doing. We're going to use the Fairy Witch. The Fairy Witch is going to summon the Tatsunoshigo. The Tatsunoshigo is going to blow itself up. We're going to be sending 3. So we're going to send the Maze, the Goblin, and we're going to send the other Fairy Witch, which is already in the graveyard, I think. Yep, it is. So what's going to change now is that now we're going to trigger the Nether Skull Temple. Well, we're going to trigger the temple because a Memento monster was destroyed. We can bring back another Memento. So the Memento that we're going to be bringing back is the Memento Maze. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to activate the Maze's effect. The Maze will blow itself up. And we're going to end up grabbing one of the trap cards. It could be either Cranium Burst or Fracture Dance. Or if you wish, you can also add a spell card because this adds any Memento card. For this specific combo, we're just going to grab the Cranium Burst. This is still at the top of the deck. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to pop the Fairy Witch. The Fairy Witch is going to bring back the Goblin. We're going to use the Goblin, and the Goblin will pop itself. And we're going to be sending the Nether Skull Dragon, and the other card that we're going to be sending is Fracture Dance. So now we look at our graveyard. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're still missing 1. So depending on the sequence, depending on what other cards you have, you can just send the other monster you're missing. In the other instance, you just return back the rest of them. We have the Nether Skull Dragon, and then during the end phase, the Nether Skull Temple is going to grab us the Fracture Dance, and is going to put the Fracture Dance. So now you end on the Nether Skull Dragon and 2 trap cards. One of them is pretty much like a pop 2. And then the Cranium Burst becomes like a monster negate that you can use multiple times during the turn. So yeah, this is basically how Memento works. I guess they're going to talk about one more thing before we end. So the added ghost is not in the Valiant Smasher set. The added ghost is going to be in Phantom Nightmare. However, once this card is released, I think the deck is going to be a little bit better than what it is at the moment. Where they already hinted at the possibility of an extra deck monster as well. So I'm pretty sure that this is not going to be like the last wave of support from Memento. I think we're going to be receiving more cards later in the future. And this deck does not look very strong at first glance. However, like a lot of people thought the same thing when Amazing Defenders first debuted with Rescue Ace and with Purely. And if you look at their format right now, those are 2 of the better decks that we have at in the current metagame. as to how can you build this deck, well, if you guys enjoyed this video and you guys want to know how can we make it work, I can do a follow-up videos with possibilities of ways that you can build and incorporate this strategy. Until then, I'm going to say thanks for tuning in. Thanks for reading and understanding. I hope you found this informative and to your liking. And keep practicing and keep dueling.